A girl is born in Mecca in the 7th century. Her father does not smile. In some homes in this world, a baby girl was seen as a shame to the family name. And some fathers, in the harshest tribes of pre-Islamic Arabia, would carry their newborn daughters out to the desert and bury them alive in the sand. This was not myth. It was a documented practice called Wad al-Banat, the burying of daughters.
And into this world, a new voice arrived, asking a question no one had asked before. This is the story of what Islam actually said about women. Not what the media says, not what extremists claim in its name, what the Quran itself says and what the Prophet Muhammad actually did in 7th century Arabia. And once you understand where these teachings came from, you will never see this history the same way again. Arabia, before Islam, was a tribal world. Wealth passed through men.
A woman could be inherited as property when her husband died, passed to his sons like a possession. There was no fixed right for a woman to inherit anything herself. Mecca was a trading crossroads between the Byzantine and Persian empires. Its economy built on caravans, its social order built on lineage and honor. Into this world, around 610 CE, a merchant named Muhammad began receiving revelations in a cave outside the city. Revelations that would become the Quran. And some of the earliest and sharpest words in that book were not about prayer or law. They were about girls. The historian Ibn Ishaq, in the earliest surviving biography of the Prophet, records that before his mission even began, Muhammad's own household looked different from his neighbors. His wife, Khadija, was not a dependent. She was his employer. She ran a successful caravan trading business, and she hired Muhammad to manage her trade routes to Syria. Struck by his honesty, she proposed marriage to him herself through an intermediary at a time when a woman initiating a marriage was rare. She was around 40, he was 25, and when the revelations began, and Muhammad returned from the cave of Hira, shaking with fear, it was Khadija who wrapped him in a cloak, listened to him, and told him he had nothing to fear. Becoming, according to Ibn Ishaq and later scholars like Karen Armstrong, the first person to believe he was truly a prophet. Not a man, a woman first, then came the verses themselves. In Surah At-Takwir, chapter 81, the Quran describes the Day of Judgment with a single, devastating question that would have struck 7th century Meccans like a blow. When the girl who was buried alive is asked for what crime she was killed. Not a command. A question aimed directly at the practice of infanticide, framing it as a crime that would be answered for. Later, in Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 7, the Quran did something legally radical for its time. It gave women a fixed, protected share of inheritance, written into scripture, not left to custom. For men is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave, and for women is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave. Before this, many women in Arabia inherited nothing. Now it was law from the text itself. The third block of this story belongs to a girl named Aisha bint Abu Bakr, who became one of the Prophet's wives and, after his death, one of the most important scholars in early Islam. According to hadith collections compiled by al-Bukhari and Muslim, Aisha went on to narrate over 2,000 hadith, sayings and actions of the Prophet, making her one of the most cited sources of Islamic law and practice in history. Men traveled from distant cities to sit and learn from her. She corrected senior male companions on matters of jurisprudence. She later led troops into a political conflict known as the Battle of the Camel. This was a woman in the 7th century, functioning as a jurist, a teacher, and briefly, a military leader. Not on the margins of the new faith, but at its center. And on the question of marriage itself, the sources are specific. In a hadith recorded by At-Tirmidhi, the Prophet is reported to have said, "The best of you are those who are best to their wives. Not the richest of you, not the most powerful, the best to their wives." Surah 33 verse 35 lists men and women together, side by side, in a single sentence as equally capable of devotion, patience, charity, and truthfulness, and promises them, without distinction, the same reward. This is the core teaching that runs beneath all of it. Not that women were granted favors by men, but that the Quran addressed them directly as full moral agents, answerable and rewarded on the same terms. Many assume Islam arrived as a religion that restricted women where none existed before, but the historical record shows something closer to the reverse. A faith that entered a world of buried daughters and unequal inheritance and inserted into its central text protections that had not existed in law before. That does not mean every custom that followed across 14 centuries of Islamic history reflected these origins perfectly. Historians disagree, and cultural practice across different regions and centuries often drifted far from Scripture. But the founding texts themselves, read in their own historical context, were not silent on the status of women. They were unusually direct. Today, Aisha's hadiths are still studied in Islamic universities from Cairo to Jakarta. Her legal opinions still appear in fatwas issued around the world. Millions of women recite every single day the same verse that once told 7th century Meccans that a buried daughter would be asked for what crime she was killed. And in mosques today, from Istanbul to Indonesia, women continue to hold the title Aisha earned first. Scholar, alima, teacher of the text. A girl was once buried in the sand for the crime of being born. Centuries later, the words that condemned that act are still recited by more than 1 billion people. And the woman who first believed them was not a follower. She was the boss.